Hey everybody, Mr. Quick here. Today we're going to be looking at Eureka Math / Engage New York Math, Module 2, Lesson 15, converting decimal division to whole number division using mental math. Big key here today is obviously we're going to be using decimals, right? We're going to turn that into whole number division, make it a little bit easier to do. Now when we say using mental math, the big thing that we're talking about here is number sense. And number sense is something we talk about a lot in class, and we do some of our warm-up problems, and it's just a matter of using your number sense, using your knowledge of numbers to be able to manipulate numbers to make them easier math problems. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at a couple of really quick, simple examples to kind of show you what I'm talking about. If we have the problem 99 plus 44, it's not that that's necessarily a complicated problem, it's that we can make it even easier. If we take 1 away, so we're going to subtract 1 from the 44, and we give it plus 1 to the 99 becomes 100, the 44 becomes 43, and now we have a really simple problem, right? 143. That's what I'm talking about when it comes to the mental math. Right? We're trying to make the work easier. Let's say we have 86 minus 39. Well, if we increase both of these by the same amount, the difference will stay the same. So we end up with 87 minus 40, and now we've got a really easy problem because now we've got a multiple of 10 we're subtracting. So now we're going to be able to do this using division, and let's jump right into it. Here's another example not using decimals. We have 105 divided by 35. Now, we can look at this, and if you can do the mental math in your head, you can say, okay, 35 plus 35 would be 70, plus 35 would be, 105, and then you can count the 35s, but then you're thinking, well, does this one count? Does that mean there's 4, or is it just these 3? And it can be a little confusing. Not totally confusing, but a little, right? You can also do the standard algorithm, 105 divided by 35, and solve it that way. You can do those things. There's nothing wrong with that. But if we can think about our math knowledge a little bit, we can play with these numbers. So we know that 105 divided by 35 is the same as the fraction 105 35ths, or 105 over 35. Now, if I were to tell you that we could then multiply and create an equivalent fraction, let's say we multiply by the constant, or as I like to call it, the magic number of 2. 105 times 2 is going to give us 210. 35 times 2 is going to give us 70. Now what I hope you're noticing here is two things. One, we can take out these zeros, right? Because they cancel each other out. They're both in the ones place. And if you just look here, now we have 21 divided by 7, which is a math fact. And, oops, that's going to give us 3. So, we came to our very simple answer by manipulating the numbers, changing the numbers to create what we wanted to have happen. All right, let's keep going. Let's look at a pretty simple division of decimals problem that we'll use the mental math again. Let's say we have, 175 divided by 3 5/10, or 3.5. I'm looking at that and I'm saying, okay, I can use that in fraction form, okay? But I know it's a little bit harder, not impossible, of course, a little bit harder to divide by a decimal. And so what if I wanted to make that a whole number? Well, if you're thinking, well, you could multiply both by 10 and you'd get 1,750 divided by 35, that's one way to do it. Absolutely, absolutely right. But seeing that this is 0.5 or half, if I have 2 halves, that's going to give me a whole. And so in this case, I'm going to use my constant, or my magic number, and I'm going to multiply by 2. 175 times 2 is going to give us 350. 3.5 times 2 is going to give us 7. Now you could actually say 3.5 times 2, move the decimal, do the actual math problem, and you would get 7, of course. But here's another quick way to think about it. I know 3 times 2 is 6. I know 0.5 times 2 is the same as half, right? 0.5 times 2 is half of 1, so that's 1. Put those together, you get 7. So now, what I hope you're seeing is that 7 goes into 35, right? So 7 goes into 35 5 times evenly, and now we also have this placeholder 0 that is in the ones place to put back over here. Since this number starts in the tens place, right? It's not going to be, or we can't have 5, we wouldn't just have 5. And so our answer is 50. So just by creating equivalency, we now have an easier math problem to solve, and we did solve it, and it was a little bit faster. Okay, let's take a look at another example here. Let's do 25 divided by 6.25. All right, well, I'm going to look at this again in fraction form, 25 over 6.25. And the thing that I should be looking at here is that 0.25, where does that look familiar? If you're thinking, hey, that's a quarter, you're right. A quarter is 1/4 of a dollar. If you have 4 quarters, you have 1 whole dollar, right? So if we had 4 of these 0.25s, we would have a whole number, right, instead of a decimal. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a whole number in this situation. So I can't just multiply by 2 because that would just give me 12.5. We don't want the point anything. We want to get rid of it. So we're going to, in this case, use our magic number. And our magic number, or our constant, is going to be 4. 25 times 4 is 100. 6.25 times 4 is going to give me 25, right? Because 6 times 4 is 24. 0.25 times 4 is 1. 24 and 1, excuse me, is 25. 25 goes into 100, exactly 4 equal times. So our answer is 4. Okay, we're going to look at a couple of different equations. Let's look at one more. I want to look at one more. Let's do this one. 6.3 divided by 1.5. In this case, we have a decimal in both equations. All right, so again, I'm going to rewrite it, 6.3 over 1.5. And what I need to have happen here is I want to give myself an easier number to work with. So if there's nothing that you're seeing here that you're thinking, well, what can I do? I'm going to always try to make my denominator into a whole number because it's easier to divide by a whole number. So even though this is 0.3 and this is 0.5, I'm going to really just, at this point, worry about this one. So I'm going to multiply that by 2. And if I do that, of course, I have to do both by 2, right? 1.5 times 2 is going to be 3. 6.3 times 2 is going to give me 12.6. Now, I'm still dividing a decimal by a whole number, but in this case, it turned out to be pretty lucky, and we have an easier problem to do, right? 3 goes into 6 twice. 3 goes into 12 4 times, and we end up with 4.2. So in this case, using our mental math and using our number sense gave us an easier problem to do, but it didn't eliminate decimals completely. But if we're dividing by a whole number, that makes it a little bit easier. So, okay, I'm going to stop right there. We'll continue to look at some of these in class and go over some different examples and different ways to do this. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.